My first question to you is, if architects can retrofit resilience into cities, can we retrofit resilience into the already established pathways of our brain? The reason I start with this is one of my best friends is an architect. He's a really good one. He has worked on some of the most iconic projects, Zorlu Center in Istanbul, Sotogrande in Spain, Montchoisy in Mauritius, and you may know the Atlantis in Dubai. And his mission is to build a place where every organism can thrive. In other words, he looks to master plan resilient cities. Now, the OECD says that resilient cities include the following things. They become courageous. They're not afraid to be who they are. They know who they are. They're authentic. They are flexible. They're adaptive, and they're responsive to change. They're not set in their ways. They are creative and innovative, and most importantly, they're sustainable in their ability to flourish. They are, in effect, capitalist societies. But architects do not start from a tabula rasa. They already have things in that land. They haven't just created new land. They have to actually work with what's there. So if he can retrofit inside a land that's already established, what can we learn from that? And I look at that in psychology and coaching in terms of retrofitting resilience when our minds have already got established pathways. We too don't start with happiness from a blank slate. So whilst it's wonderful to have those questions, as in, how do I become more happy? How do I get my balance? And those are very valid questions. What we have to understand is we can give as many answers as you like. They will be researched, they will be backed up, they will be thought through, but we need to work within the parameters we've already got established. If we already think we have a sense of entitlement to happiness, we may not be so keen to put in the work that enables us to be happy. So we might have to find another way around it. And that's the important aspect. What I'm going to talk about is when we try and retrofit resilience, we have to work with lived experience. And that lived experience might come from culture, it might come from family, it might come from religion, it might come from so many different places. It might come from our friends, from influencers, from social media. So we have to work within that lived experience. We have to be aware that people are coming with emotional baggage already. They won't want to do certain things. You'll start suggesting changes and they'll push back. The other thing is, we also need to be a little kinder on ourselves, because no one ever taught us how to be happy. Think about it. What do we say to people? We say things like, oh, just calm down. We say, oh, just be happy, just smile. That's not happy. We've never really learned. And so I hope in these next 20 minutes or so, I'll be able to give you a couple of tools in order to build that ability to be happy. But of course, I know I'm working within an already established structure. So I thought I would also point out some of the barriers, some of the red flags that might pop up, some of the things we need to be aware of. They're not a problem, but if we're aware of them, we can work around them. And then I'm going to give you 3 tools that will set you on your path to build resilience back into your life, or to start building it from now. So we start dealing with the person as they are. And one of the first things is we need to remember that we need to respect what's there. A lot of people come to me and they want to change. I don't want to be like me anymore. I want to be different. You are you. And there's nothing wrong with that. In actual fact, and certainly as our last speaker said beautifully, adversity and what we've been through can make us the strong, resilient person that we are. In actual fact, going through adversity and failure creates the conditions to thrive, which a smooth sailing pathway would not have given us. Because when we failed, when we've been through things, when we've had to struggle, we learn, I know I can do it that way. And not only that, I know I can do it because I've done it once before. So respect what's there. Don't be afraid of it. Certainly, yes, we can work to minimize the emotional and the negative emotional impact that it might have had on you, but respect what's there. Yes, be sad that you didn't have perhaps the support you would have liked or the support you would have needed. But remember, you got through, you grew, you were successful in navigating that. And don't ever lose that, because that's part of your strength as a person. So respect what's there. There will be things you need to save. And as architects start breaking ground or breaking down buildings, there's two things. Sometimes, and in the UK, we have conservation areas. We have to keep the facade exactly as it was, but rebuild all of the inside. But that's no different to working with people. Sometimes people need or want to save face. They don't want to be seen that they're looking for help or needing help. So you need to protect that. And this is where we were talking about that connection with our labels and connection with things that we ought not to be connecting to and trying to detach from them. But if someone is so fused with their title or their position, we just have to be a little bit sensitive to that. And we cannot jump in and say, well, don't be connected to that. They're not going to listen to you. And ultimately, you want them to be helped. And that's why we need to be sensitive to when we recognize that clients are pushing back or people are pushing back and they're saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. That's okay. If you can't do that, we find another way. That's all right. And the other thing is, as you start digging, you might actually uncover structures of strength that you never realized were there. And that's why it can be very beneficial to do that self-reflection once you've been through an adverse event. Not when it's still emotional, because it's very hard to really think about it at that point. But once you've been through it and you're in a place of calm, really think back and think about, well, what did I do? What did I build on? How did I keep going? What motivated me? Those things will serve you well in the future. Keep what works. This is individual for everybody. I always say, learn, ask, find out. But remember, knowledge is like a pick and mix. If it works for you, you use it. If it doesn't, don't. It's fine. Tweak it, change it, make it work for you. As we were talking about diets earlier, certain ways of dieting may not work for people. It might be a case of focusing instead on exercise. There may be different things that we need and different shifts we need to make in our minds. Don't think one size fits all. So keep what works for you. Change affects other people. This is a really important one, because what you'll find is you might undergo coaching or you might do training or you might attend these seminars and you'll go, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make those changes. I'm going to come off social media, or I'm going to set my goals and I'm going to go and achieve them. And then your friends start going, oh, well, you've changed. Well, you're different. What's happening here is it's much easier to point the finger at someone else rather than the three fingers pointing back at us, that we could do something about ourselves. And what we prefer to do is we prefer to bring other people back to where we are, rather than thinking, well, wow, they're happy. They're doing really well. What can I do? What can I learn from them to improve myself? So just be very mindful. Change affects others. You won't be doing it in isolation. And as long as you know what you want and you're aware of your own blueprint, your purpose, your authenticity, don't let those dissenting voices affect you. And it may well be that you need to change your community. And that's exactly what our previous speaker said. If your tribe isn't working for you, find a new one. And relating to that, as we start making those changes, we need to find strong scaffolding. So this is what happens in breaking down a building and building it back up again. We need to secure what's there. It's our network that is going to help us do that. And our network consists of teachers, mentors, friends, family, but make sure they have your best interests at heart. Make sure they're not standing there supporting you. I'm doing it practically. It's not how they support you, really. But they might have their own agenda. They may be saying, oh, yes, yes, do that. That's a great idea, because actually they want you to do something for them. Or less maliciously, it may be family. And family may say to you, you're okay the way you are. You are absolutely perfect the way you are. And it comes from a place of love. But if you do not feel that, then actually what they're doing is they are invalidating your feelings. And so whilst you can't do much about what they do, what you can make sure you do is you don't invalidate other people's. So if somebody comes to you and says, oh, I just feel so awful and so rubbish at everything, and you say to them, no, you're not, you're brilliant, you've got this achievement and that achievement, you haven't allowed them the chance to accept their feelings. So the first thing you say to people is, I'm really sad to hear that. Why? Why? And then find out and learn. And that way, if any advice is to be offered, it can be more appropriately tailored. So be a strong scaffolding as well as seek one out. And remember that change is an ongoing process of development. There will be things that you'll go along that line and then you'll think, oh no, suddenly that doesn't work. That's okay. We know we can think flexibly, we can find another way, because the point about recognizing the fact we have barriers is that we need to work around them. And if we've worked around them before, we can work around them again. So here are my 3 tools that I want to give you to help with that change and with that building of a resilient person. The first is to know your goal. Know your master plan. Architects don't just go in and go, right, I think I'll have a school here, and I think I'll have a temple there, and I think I'll have a lake there. No, they have a master plan, because that way, when we only have a finite amount of time and energy, we've only got 24 hours in a day, we know that when we are working towards our goal, we know what those goals are. So this is the first exercise, really simple, really, really easy. You draw a circle. And in that circle, you tell me, and you're going to do it in segments like little pies if you play Trivial Pursuit, what is important to your ideal way of life. So what is your ideal way of life? And then you tell me what's important. And those segments may be different sizes. So for some of you, family might be hugely important. Family might take up about a whole sort of 20% of your pie. Exercise, maybe that's important, but not that important. So maybe exercise is only a little bit here. And then you populate this, you can see what I'm doing. Spirituality might be also very important to you. So that might be here. Or religion, that might be important. So that could go in there. Friendships, maybe they're really important too. And then maybe travel, you like travel, that's key. And maybe money. Okay, we're allowed to say it. It's your ideal. No one's going to judge you. You know, money might be there. It doesn't matter. This is for you. You don't need to show people. Remember that whole thing about pointing, 3 fingers pointing back? So you work out what goes into your ideal life, and you work out how important each of those elements are. But then this is the special bit. This is where the work takes place. On a scale of 0 to 10, you need to mark on there how much time you're devoting to those things. And you might find family is massively important to me, but I'm working so hard, I'm barely seeing them. So that's like a 2 or a 3. You mark it on there. You might think exercise, actually, I'm getting to the gym, I'm going swimming, I'm doing all right. That's about a 4 or 5. So you mark it on there. Travel, well, maybe, as you can see, I mean, I would love to be there with you, but I can't be because we're still not great with travel at the moment. So maybe that's only a 1 or a 2. Money, perhaps you're working so hard, you've made tons of money. So that's like an 8 or a 9. And you go through and you say, well, okay, I'm about here with this element, and I'm about here with this element. And you can see suddenly if your life is feeling a little bit out of balance, what you've been missing out on or what you've been spending too much time on. So you've got your ideal, you know what makes up your ideal, you know what you've been focusing on. The final step is simple. You look at this and you say, right, I'm feeling out of balance. Which one do I focus on next? And I'm not talking about making a 2 up to a 10. I am just saying, what one thing can I do to make this 2 a 3? What can I do to move it there, that one spot? And if you're clever, you might wish to stack it with one of the other goals. So maybe you haven't spent enough time with family, but you like exercising. Go out for walks together. Go and play together. Go to the gym together. Go swimming together. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe you haven't seen your friends and you haven't traveled much. Book a weekend away together. You can stack some of those and push a lot of those up together. However, you may look at this and say to me, oh, well, why are you concentrating on family next? Because travel is your lowest of all of them. This is why I ask you to devote the amount of importance and the value of each of those. Yes, travel is a 1 and family is a 2 or 3, but look how important travel is compared to how important family is. It is therefore more important to start with family. So this is known as the well-being wheel in some circles. I'm using it as a coaching tool, and I like to call it my ideal life wheel. It's your master plan. And I would revisit this every 3 months or so, because this will change. And also it might change for the better. These facets, these important things may stay the same, but you might find, oh, actually, now I'm up here. That's great. And now I'm up here, but maybe my friendships are still down there, and that's the bit to focus on next. So your values may change, or where you are on that scale may change. So revisit it every so often. So that's tool number 1. That's your master plan. That's what architects use, and we have one as well. The second thing, tool number 2, as I said, we cannot start by jumping in and going, I need to change everything, because there are things that may be good. There are things that may be helpful to us. So instead, I would like to use the SWOT analysis, which you probably know because you're a business school, but we're going to use it on ourselves, the personal SWOT analysis. We look at our strengths, we look at our weaknesses, we look at our opportunities, and we look at our threats. It's very simple. It's the same principles. What am I good at? Where am I powerful? Where am I actually really doing well? And if you're struggling, look at your wheel. Because it might be, actually, I'm a really good friend. I'm really good at my work. I'm really good at running. You might actually pick up some of the things that you're good at on your wheel. And if you can't think of them, ask somebody that you love, ask somebody who'll be honest with you, and ask them to list your strengths. Weaknesses, many of us do find that easier to do. But if you're struggling, again, ask a friend. They will hopefully be happy to tell you, but tell you kindly. But be aware of them. And weaknesses may be some of those barriers that we looked at earlier. Weaknesses or threats may be some of those barriers. What opportunities have you got if you look at your strengths and your weaknesses? Now, be clever with these opportunities, because, for example, we as adults, and I was a teacher for many years, we ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they go, I want to be a vet. Okay, if you want to be a vet, you have to take biology, and then you have to go and work on animal husbandry, and you've got this pathway and you're already on it. Whereas actually, if you said to that child, what problems do you want to solve? They might say to you, I want to make sure that no animal is hurt. But they haven't got the word for that when you ask them, what job do you want to do? Because the only job they can think of is vet, because that's the one we talk about as children. And by knowing that, suddenly your opportunity becomes different. You could work with a zoo. You could work with an animal shelter. You can work for a charity. You could open your own home up to stray dogs. You could dog walk. You could do so many different things. But that's by asking the question, what problems do you want to solve? So ask yourself that question. What problems do I want to solve? What legacy do I want to leave? How do I want people to see me? And that will give you your opportunities. But work your opportunities out within your strengths and weaknesses. What I mean by that is, okay, you want to make sure that no animal is hurt, but if you're scared of all animals, that's not going to help, is it? Maybe you need to be a campaigner for a charity then. Then you know, by knowing your strengths and weaknesses, where that opportunity is going to go. Your threats, I want you to look at that slightly differently. Your threats are things like, oh, I can't do this because I've got children, and that's fair enough. Or I can't move physically because I've got to look after parents. Again, that's absolutely okay. However, there are other threats that are in there which are easier to resolve. And they are things like, oh, I don't have the skills for that, or I don't know how to do that. Oh, I'm too scared. I don't want to give that a go. Well, instead of saying, and a lot of coaches, CBT coaches in particular, they say, well, write down what's the worst thing that could happen if you do it. And for some people that works. I'm going to ask you instead, write down as a threat, what is the worst that could happen if you don't do it? That tends to stop me procrastinating, because when I start thinking that, I start thinking, oh, well, if I don't do it, everybody else is going to start going ahead and I'm going to be stagnant. And if everybody else is going this way, not only am I stagnant, but I'm actually going backwards. So the threat is, what would happen if I don't do it? That might motivate you. So this is how I would suggest you use the SWOT analysis on a person rather than in business, but same principles apply. The third thing. Now, this third thing is much more to do with your support system. We need to have friends and people around us who are what Napoleon Hill calls our mastermind network. People who champion us, people who support us, people who really care about our progress, and people who are like-minded. If any of you, like me, are a freelancer, I work for myself, I can sit there and think, none of my friends understand what I'm doing. So what I have to do is I have to make friends in this workplace sphere, because they're the ones who understand what I'm going through. My ordinary friends are there to support me morally and as a friend, to love me, to tell me that I'm doing okay in general. They're not going to be my mastermind network, so you might have to have two. Now, a little task you can do here is cups of tea. Now, in the UK, and I'm sure in India too, tea is a really big thing for us. Tea makes everything better. And May 21st, we had International Tea Day as well. Now, the reason I draw cups of tea is just so we've got space to write in the middle, but I want you to think about who you would share that cup of tea with. Now, these people will be people who you can be authentic with, you can be yourself with, but most importantly, because a good cup of tea takes time to brew, it takes time to drink, the people with whom you want to spend your time and energy with. And write them down. You might have 3, 4, 5 or so cups. I'll just put 3 down. Really think about who they are. Put their name down or their role. It might be mum, it might be sister, it might be best friend. But the next thing I want you to do is write down their values. Values. What are the values that these people have? Kindness, sense of humor, generosity, loyalty. If you can write down their values, you already now have an insight into what values you find important, because they are the ones that you've looked for in the people that you have chosen to share the cup of tea with. And you will notice, if you do this exercise, there's a bunch of other people in your life that you don't want to put on that board. You don't want to have that cup of tea with. You don't want to share time with them. Maybe look at their values as well, because those are the things you want to avoid. And that is how you get an insight into what's important to you. And then you do 3 things. The first is you tell these people how important they are to you, because they don't know. They don't know what they're doing right. And if you tell them, actually, they'll be reminded. And I know The sad part is, whenever I do this in the UK, I tell them to send a text to somebody that they put on their cup of tea. And I also tell them you're in a training session and the trainer has said you need to do this, because more often than not, you will get a text back with somebody saying, are you drunk? It's a bit early for that, isn't it? Because we don't normally tell people these things. Why? Why don't we tell people these things? And why don't we be the ones to make a difference? Why don't we be the ones to tell people, you know what, you're important in my life, and I just felt like saying that, so there you go. Why can't we be those people? And I've started to do that, and I love it, because what I tend to get back in return is something just as lovely. So that's how we boost our happiness there as well. But tell them. Second thing is, be more like them. You know what values you want to attract into your life? Go and be those values. Because if you're somebody who just simply gives out money to people, all you're going to attract is people who want to be bought. But if you're somebody who is kind to people, then you'll attract people who are kind back. So really think about those values and be those values. And the last thing in terms of those values is seek to spend more time with them. So often we tell people, oh, just remove the toxic people from your life, but we don't know how to do that. So the best thing to do is, in fact, seek to spend more time with the positive people, because then when the toxic ones come along, we can say, I'm really sorry, I'm too busy, because we've actively sought happiness. We've actively gone out to spend time with the people who make our life fulfilled. So those are three of those tools. Now, when it comes to planting the seed of change, maybe it won't make a lot of difference. Maybe we'll just think, oh, well, what is just telling one person that they're meaningful to me going to do? Well, if architects thought like that, they'd never plant trees. They'd never have the amazing things. And in India, my friend's firm has created the Ritz-Carlton Bangalore, the Lavasa Accor Pullman in Pune, the Leela Kempinski in Goa, the Glade One Clubhouse in Ahmedabad. We wouldn't have those amazing places if architects thought, oh, there's no point, I'm never going to benefit from it. So what I want you to think about is one seed of change. It can make a difference. It can, it can provide us with sustenance for loved ones, because a baby tree, it may not give us that protection, but it will provide sustenance for wildlife. A seed planted gives us a positive legacy. We've made a difference. We've started doing something. One seed alone improves the soil. One seed alone is a symbol of growth. And one seed alone is an investment in you. Seed capital, we might call it. And as you can see, if you just plant that, it's worth remembering that in 10 years' time, one tree can grow 25 feet. So whilst we might say maybe the best time to plant those seeds was 10 years ago, I would still say the second best time is now.
Is now.
Thank you.
Is now. Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm overwhelmed listening to you, Audrey ma'am, because you have highlighted so wonderful points, and the last one was the master stroke, planting seed of change, and it has to be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and of course environmentally, to make things more sustainable. And the best time, if you have not done it 10 years before, the best time is now. I'm overwhelmed, and if I start, I'll go on. I have got so many compliments in the chat box, and there's like one question. It's not a question. I think Mr. Sandeep has shared his thought, because I have learned a lot. I have got those well-being wheel in my mind. I have got that SWOT analysis for me now, and of course the third point that you have mentioned, that what if we don't do it? That's the question we should ask. So he has just put it that we see the threats as challenges now, so the SWOT has become SWAT these days.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's known as reframing, and it's just language that we use. So that's no different. Threat feels like an aggressive word. Yes. The only reason I like SWOT is because SWOT is a word. and SWOT isn't, but it doesn't matter. It absolutely
matter.
doesn't matter. You can see those words as you wish, and challenges sounds less threatening than threats. So it's similar to when I say to people, don't use right or wrong, instead use the phrases healthy or unhealthy, or effective or ineffective, because right or wrong seems quite structured.
More diluted.
So,
yes,
exactly. So
over to you, Vipin sir.
Doesn't matter what word you use.
Thank you, ma'am. Really excellent presentation. In fact, I had a feeling that I am sitting in the classroom in front of you, full of energy. We are in different countries, but right now your presentation is just a lively presentation. No words for you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. And now I will invite you to come to Indian Amity University and give the offline lectures to the students so that they get the maximum benefit from your experience and from your knowledge, ma'am.
That would be incredible. That would be absolutely incredible. So maybe when we can actually guarantee to get there. At the moment, we've got so many strikes in the UK. No one's flying anywhere right now.
But ma'am, today I have a feeling that you are a teacher and I am your student. So I get the 100% my doubts, my clarity. I get the 100% clarity on all the topics, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Renu, for the comments.
And ma'am, there are a number of comments for you, ma'am. The participants are so happy and they are so excited to write down the comments, and there's no end of the comments which they are sending in the chat box, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Renu, for the comments. And I think it was a very well structured program, and this was one of the difficult and one of the easiest session, I can say, when we think about the aspect of advances in teaching to research, the disaster aspect, green technology, sustainability and happiness. Before I go into the aspect of climate and health, there is one point which comes to Dr. Tan, is how we can control our hormones for a better mood. And there is an aspect when we understand, being as a scientist, the aspect of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin and endorphins. So relating these into the aspect, I would like to just know one comment from her, and then we will take up Dr. Nautiyal's lecture.
Yes. A lot of people think, as psychologists and coaches, we tell people go outside, get out into nature. And then people think, is something magical going to happen in nature? And the answer is actually yes, because when we get out into the sunshine, it stimulates the production of vitamin D, it stimulates the production of serotonin, and serotonin is the thing that regulates our system, so digestion, sleep, and so on. If we go out there and maybe exercise, we get a hit of dopamine because we've achieved something. If we're out there with friends, it builds our oxytocin, which is our warm and fuzzies, our bonding chemical. But yes, those magical things happen outside, but we need to keep doing it. We can't just go out once and go, oh, great, I'm cured. It doesn't work that way. We need to find that regularity and that structure in many ways to keep going out there. And the reason why that's important too is by having some sort of structure, certainly with the pandemic, certainty gives us a sense of security as well. And that will help us too. So all of those happy hormones can easily be created and stimulated through going outside. Humans are also biophilic. It means that we have an affinity with nature. We enjoy nature. And therefore, when we go out there, we actually feel better because we like being out there. The smell of rain on grass, it's cited as one of the favorite smells of people. So, and the sound of running water, when we're doing meditations or yoga, we like to have those sounds in the background. So nature is a really big thing for us. So one of the easiest ways of stimulating the happy hormones is actually getting out there and getting out there regularly.
Thank you a lot. You have really given an insight that how dopamine is associated with pleasurable sensations along with learning, memory, motor system, our daily activities and others.